Star Wars was released in 1977, written and directed by George Lucas, starring Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, Harrison Ford as Han Solo, Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader. Hey everybody, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking out my channel and joining me for another Star Wars review. Leading up to Rise of Skywalker, we are going through a series of Star Wars reviews. We have just finished reviewing and talking about the prequel trilogy. Now we have hit the original trilogy, the one that started it all with Star Wars. And the movie that started my love for this franchise, as it did for so many other people around the world. And if you're one of those people and you'd like to talk about Star Wars with me, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. Just comment all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below, and let me know all your thoughts about Star Wars. And for those of you that have clicked on this video and haven't seen Star Wars yet, what are you doing? This review will have spoilers. This will be a heavy spoiler review. If you haven't seen Star Wars yet, go watch it. Like, come on. Go watch Star Wars, then come on back, and I'd love for you to come back and join in the conversation. And with all that out of the way, let's talk about the world-changing film of Star Wars. When a young farm boy named Luke gains possession of a droid containing a message from Princess Leia, who is now a captive of the evil Galactic Empire, he must team up with the old Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi and a smuggler named Han Solo to go rescue her. I remember being about 6 or 7 years old when I first saw the movie Star Wars. And from the moment the movie started, I just remember being sucked into the world and being fascinated by Star Wars. I remember when I was a kid, I always thought it was so hard to imagine a world without Star Wars because it was so ingrained into pop culture and to everyday life. Everyone talked about the Force. Everyone said, "May the Force be with you." Everyone knew Han, Luke, Leia. Everyone knew Darth Vader. They were such staples in the culture at the time that I was growing up that it was hard to imagine, like, people not knowing what a lightsaber was. It's like, it's always been with me. I've always known what a lightsaber was. I always knew about the Force. It's hard to imagine a world without Star Wars in it for me. And Star Wars is one of those rare movies where it's just as exciting as a kid as it is when you grow up to become an adult. My love for Star Wars has not diminished at all. When this movie first starts and that big Star Destroyer just comes over the screen and they're pursuing the rebels that have the secret plans to their ultimate weapon, the Death Star, it just drops you right into the middle of the action. It is so exciting. It is thrilling. And from that first image, it just captures your imagination of what's going on, what is happening in this world. And you really get a feel of how the rebels are the small guys and the Empire has such a hold over them in that one first image of the first scene in the movie when the Empire is boarding the rebel ship to get the plans from Princess Leia. And then we get the introduction of the one, the only, the greatest movie villain of all time, Darth Vader. Darth Vader, when he comes onto the scene, when he comes through that puff of smoke, you just get the sense that this guy is menacing. He's not to be messed with. You can just feel the danger that comes with Darth Vader as he enters the scene. And James Earl Jones, as the voice of Darth Vader, he brings a lot to the role. The actor in the suit is David Prowse. He's the one that's physically in the Vader suit, but his voice didn't exactly work for the character.
I'm tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
But James Earl Jones, the power and bass in his voice just matches the power that Darth Vader displays on the screen whenever he enters a scene.
Commander, tear this ship apart until you found those plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive!
James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader is one of the best voice castings ever. It might just be the best voice casting ever, period. And in order to make sure that the Empire doesn't get their hands on the plans that the rebels have stolen, Princess Leia puts the plans in an R2 unit, and R2-D2 and C-3PO escape through an escape pod and land on the planet of Tatooine, where they will lead us to Luke. And the first part of the movie, where it's just C-3PO and R2-D2 on the desert planet of Tatooine, was such a really interesting choice that George Lucas made, because the audience is spending a long time with these droids who don't exactly have human traits that we can emotionally connect to. And it was also a really great idea how George Lucas used those droids landed on Tatooine to show us more of this world. We get some interactions with the Jawas for the first time. We see this cool, like, big skeleton of some animal. We have no idea what it is. It kind of looks like it's from the dinosaur era, but with traits and characteristics that we don't recognize. It makes this world feel so much more like the galaxy far, far away. Whenever I watch Star Wars, I never feel like I'm watching Earth. I never feel like I'm on Earth. I always feel like I'm exactly where this movie wants me to be, in a galaxy far, far away. There were so many details that they added to these locations and to these sets that just make them feel like they're from a totally different galaxy. They feel otherworldly, and it always helps me feel sucked in and transcendent from our world into the Star Wars galaxy. Then when we get introduced to Luke Skywalker himself, played by Mark Hamill, which addressed in the prequels a little bit, we know is Anakin's son who has been hidden away on Tatooine, so Anakin as Darth Vader won't sense his presence. The casting of Hayden Christensen in this way was actually brilliant, because I can totally believe that Mark Hamill is the child of Padme and Anakin Skywalker just by the way those actors look. They really captured good lookalikes for the parents of Luke Skywalker, because when I go from the prequels to this movie, I totally buy that Luke came from Anakin and Padme. Mark Hamill in this movie, he really is the quintessential what you think of when you think of the hero's journey, because he starts off, he's on Tatooine, he's kind of trapped there, he wants to leave, he wants to go to fight in the academy with his buddies. He's the only one that hasn't really left Tatooine. He has to stay on the Moisture Farm with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. And you just really connect with Luke in this way because he just longs for more. He displays what all of us feel in life, where he just longs for more. He's stuck in the same place and he wants to get out there more. He wants to long for adventure. And as I grow up and as I get older, I totally relate more to Luke Skywalker's character in this movie than I ever have when I was a kid. The moment that perfectly captures that relatability to Luke Skywalker, and the most iconic scene that I can think of representing longing for more and wanting more in life, longing for adventure, is the iconic staring at the twin suns scene. The iconic scene where Luke goes out to stare at the twin suns and the John Williams score kicks in. It's a really powerful scene emotionally, and that's the moment where you really capture what Luke is all about in this movie. What his character desires and what he wants is perfectly encapsulated in this one image, in this one scene with John Williams music. It's beautiful, it's perfectly shot, it's almost an entirely perfect scene. And then once Luke finds the message and he finds Ben Kenobi, once again, the casting of the prequels with Ewan McGregor is one of the most perfect castings ever, because when you see Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi in this movie, Ewan McGregor did a lot to add more to that character for me when I watched this movie after watching the prequels. Alec Guinness on his own is still a really cool mythological character that I've liked even before I watched the prequels, but after watching the prequels and seeing Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi and then connecting him into Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi, it works perfectly. I totally buy that these are the exact same characters, that these are the same guys, and it's really cool to see Obi-Wan from the prequels now older, living as a hermit on Tatooine, watching over Luke. And you hear people talk about Obi-Wan and they're talking about him like he's deceased. Uncle Owen even says that he died years ago in the war with Luke's father. Obviously to keep Obi-Wan Kenobi's identity a secret and to keep him safe on Tatooine. But even once Luke says the words Obi-Wan Kenobi and Alec Guinness says,
Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
You can really feel Alec Guinness as the character of Ben Kenobi thinking about the past and all the memories he has about that name. And he brings a lot to Obi-Wan Kenobi in that one moment. And when Ben Kenobi takes Luke back to his home to tell him about the story of the Clone Wars and what happened to Luke's father, we know all of it from the prequels, but when you take the prequels out of it, when you watch this movie as it was intended when it was originally released, it adds so much backstory and mystery to this world. Even more so than we have already set up. It's such a great scene. It really captures your imagination. What are the Clone Wars? Who was Anakin Skywalker? What did this look like in this world that I'm experiencing now? What did all of this look like in this world? Like many things in this movie, it totally fuels your imagination as a kid and as an adult, and it just really sucks you more into this world and the lore and the mythology that's happening. When we learn about the Force for the first time, as Ben Kenobi explains it,
It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
it just adds so much more depth to this world and this galaxy so far away. It makes it feel so much more real and more investing to me as the audience member. And I love when they get to Mos Eisley's Cantina and you get all those alien creatures, the practical effects, the practical masks and costumes. They look great. Some of them look a little bit dated, I won't lie, but they're all so diverse and they're all over the place, and this whole cantina is just filled with all these different characters and creatures designs. It's mesmerizing to me. It captures the imagination. There is so much to look at. There's so much detail that makes this world and this galaxy feel so much more lived in. And of course, this is where we get introduced to Harrison Ford as the iconic smuggler Han Solo. And Han Solo's introduction in this movie, it just sets the tone of who this character is and where he begins in this trilogy, because as he goes on in the trilogy, his character goes through an evolution, he goes through an arc, but where he sits right now, you can tell he's someone who's a loner, he's used to fending for himself, and he does all he can at all costs to survive. And I wasn't going to touch on the special editions. Everyone's talked about the special editions and how they've changed stuff and how the changes suck, but I will talk about the one change that really does bother me, as it bothers a lot of people, which is the Han shot first issue. In the special edition, when Han Solo gets held up by Greedo, and Greedo shoots first, and Han does that really jerky head move as he shoots like a second after, it takes away from the character of how it was originally intended, because in the original cut, when Greedo is about to shoot Han Solo, and Han Solo knows he's about to shoot him. We get that shot of him reaching for his blaster just before Greedo is about to shoot him, and he just shoots Greedo right under the table. That adds a lot to Han Solo's character, and it shows that he is someone who is not to be messed with. He is a character that is not afraid to go dark, and he is living in a dark part of the galaxy. So to have Greedo shoot first and Han shoot after is really a dumb change because it takes away that part of the character for me. But that's it. I'm not going to talk about any more of the special editions. They've been talked about to death. I have really nothing more to add. I just really wanted to mention that Han shot first. And once Luke and Han get together in this movie, after he's agreed to fly Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker to the Death Star to save the Princess Leia, watching naive young Luke and a grizzled Han Solo butt heads throughout this entire movie is a lot of fun. It's an interaction that we don't get a lot of in the rest of the trilogy because this is where the characters start before it develops throughout the next two movies, but watching these characters meet for the first time and being at such different ideologies and points of their life to the point where they are constantly butting heads in this movie is a lot of fun. It adds a lot to their relationship throughout the rest of the trilogy, and I really like going back to seeing where these characters began and where their relationship started. And talking about the Death Star, let's talk about the Death Star for a second, because the Death Star is one of the most iconic villain weapons of all movies, of all pop culture, of all time. The quintessential scene that I think really demonstrates just why the Death Star is so iconic is the scene with Alderaan, because in the scene with Alderaan, when Tarkin is threatening Princess Leia, trying to get the information of where the Rebels base is hiding, and in order to do so, he threatens to blow up Alderaan unless Princess Leia gives up where the Rebels base is hidden. And even after Princess Leia does so, Tarkin does still blow up Alderaan. The blowing up of Alderaan just really sets the perspective of the stakes and danger that this Death Star really does represent for the rest of this galaxy, and why we want our heroes to take down the evil Galactic Empire so badly in this movie, because we have now seen what this Death Star can do, and it is just one of the most evil things imaginable. Blowing up an entire planet is now gone. All of its residents, dead. And I absolutely love the segment of the movie where our heroes are on the Death Star going to rescue Princess Leia. This movie has the sense of adventure written all over, but once our characters get onto the Death Star, it is just so exciting. It is so much fun. You're infiltrating the enemy's territory. You're with the characters. You're sneaking around. You're hoping they don't get caught. It's got kind of a suspenseful feel to it, as well as an exciting adventure feel to it. Once Luke Skywalker and Han Solo rescue Princess Leia, I love when these three get together for the first time. Princess Leia and Carrie Fisher just slips and falls into the dynamic of these two guys perfectly. She doesn't take any crap from them. She talks back to them. She's kind of snarky, completely holds her own. And for a character that was represented as the damsel in distress, once she gets rescued, Carrie Fisher brings a lot of grit, personality, and strength to the character of Princess Leia. And we've touched upon a little bit of how the prequels have benefited this movie a little bit more for me. But one of the ways that the prequels really benefits this movie is with the rematch of Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Death Star. When they arrive on the Death Star and Vader says,
I sense something, a presence I've not felt since...
That line now just has a lot more weight and history to it to me. And when Vader and Obi-Wan face off again after 20 years of not seeing each other, I feel way more invested in the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan in this movie after watching them in the prequels than I was when I was a kid and this part came up. Because now that I've seen these two characters and their history and their past together in the prequels, to see them face off again after 20 years, the prequels just help me feel more of the history when this fight comes up. And what this fight is really about, Vader wanting redemption for the butt kicking he got from Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 3. But of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi lets Vader have this. He lets Vader win so that he can become a Force ghost to help Luke further on in his training in ways
More powerful than you can possibly imagine.
and this movie just doesn't stop, because even after we get the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi, we get a moment where Princess Leia is comforting Luke. We get a moment to sit in it before we're back into the action, and we get the TIE Fighters attacking the Millennium Falcon, and Han and Luke are blasting off the TIE Fighters. I mean, it's just really great stuff. It's a lot of fun, and we get some really great fun banter and lines in there between Han and Luke. Great kid, don't get cocky. Until our characters arrive on Yavin 4, where they deliver the Death Star plans, and they find out that there is a little port in the Death Star, that if a starfighter can blast into that port, it'll go down to the main reactor, and it'll blow up the entire Death Star. And then we get the raid on the Death Star, and my goodness, does this scene hold up so well. This movie was shot in 1977, and these models and these figures and the way that George Lucas uses the camera to make it zoom past, make you feel the intensity and the speed that these starfighter pilots are feeling as they're going through the Death Star. It is so thrilling. It's still so exciting. It's still so much fun. And you get Darth Vader getting in on the action in his little TIE fighter coming in to fight the rebels as they're trying to destroy the Death Star. The stakes are so set up. The stakes are there. They're so high. You can feel it. You're rooting for the good guys. You're rooting against the Empire. You've seen all these starfighter pilots blow up left and right. And when Luke is finally able to shoot through and get it into that hole to go down to the main reactor and that Death Star just blows up, that relief that Luke shows on his face, you feel it as the audience member. It's just a sigh of relief and a release of the exhaustion that you feel from this movie. And then our heroes get rewarded as the movie ends. Guys, Star Wars is still so great. Star Wars is just one of those movies that once you hit play, it holds on to you and it doesn't let go for 2 straight hours. It's so drenched in lore and mythology and mystery and excitement and adventure. Great characters, really fun action, really fun adventure. It's got a really cool mythology to it. It's one of those galaxies, it's one of those worlds in movies that sucks you in like no other. It makes you feel completely invested. It makes you feel like you're in a galaxy far, far away. And of course, how can I talk about Star Wars and its transcendence from our world into another without mentioning John Williams' music in Star Wars? John Williams' music does just as much to transcend you into this world as much as the creature designs, the locations, and the set designs do. Music of John Williams is really what breathes life into this movie, into its scenes, into its sequences. Without John Williams' masterful composing and score into this movie is not nearly as exciting, as investing, or put it simply, as magical as it is. It's arguably the most influential musical score in any movie ever, and like this movie, it is completely timeless. Guys, obviously, I love Star Wars. I'm a little biased. I've loved it for years. I can recognize the flaws in it. Some of the creature designs do look a little bit dated. The acting isn't always the strongest, and actors have admitted to goofing off on set because this was a risky project. This is essentially one of the highest grossing independent films of all time because no one believed in this product. No one knew what the heck was going on. Only George Lucas had his vision and the people around him to help him kind of bring that vision to life. He had to put all of his trust in himself, and the people around him had to put all of their trust in him to make this product as good as it was. It's a miracle that it turned out and became the pulp culture phenomenon for decades and decades that it has been and will continue to be. But nonetheless, the world that George Lucas had created for this movie and the characters that he had created to live within it is what transcends all the flaws of Star Wars and makes it a timeless classic that many, many generations and people, including myself, have loved for years and will continue to love for many more years to come. Anyway, guys, I could go on and on and on about the first Star Wars movie, but I don't have all the time in the world. So that's all I have to say about Star Wars today. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about Star Wars. Do you like it as much as a lot of other people do? Or are you one of those people where you're like, I don't get Star Wars. Where's the hype? What's the point? Why do people like this franchise so much? I want to hear all your thoughts and opinions. Comment down below and let me know all your thoughts and opinions about Star Wars. And guys, as always, thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. Join me again next week when we will talk about The Empire Strikes Back, my personal favorite. As always, guys, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and may the Force be with you.
Always.